The Natchez Trace Parkway is a 444-mile drive through 3 states, Tennessee, Mississippi, and Alabama, used by Native Americans, Kentucks, European settlers, slave traders, and future presidents. It's regarded as one of the best motorcycle and bicycle routes in the U.S. Over 200 years after Meriwether Lewis's death, many questions remain. Was the famous explorer and statesman murdered, or did he commit suicide? By the time of Lewis's death at 35, he had been William Clark's partner on the historic trek to the Pacific, in communication with Thomas Jefferson, and governor of the Upper Louisiana Territory. Most historians believe the gunshot wounds that ended his life were self-inflicted, but writings in his odd behavior around the time of his death cast questions as to whether or not that is the case. Forensic scientists and mental health professionals have weighed in, casting doubts on whether the testimony provided by the innkeeper's wife could be reliable on a moonless night. Little still is known for certain about the events of October 10th and 11th, 1809, when Lewis stopped at what was then Grinder's Stand, a log cabin lodging house near present-day Hohenwald, Tennessee, and checked in, but never was to check out. 3 years after completing the trek west, Lewis was by then the governor. He was on his way to Washington, D.C. to settle debts. Accounts are confused as to whether he traveled alone or with servants, but he was definitely armed with several pistols, a rifle, and a tomahawk. The innkeeper's wife, Miss Priscilla Griner, testified she heard several shots in a fight or scuffle. Later, she saw Lewis wounded and begging for water and aid. She also stated that during the night he behaved oddly and talked to himself. She stated she was afraid to offer help, and he was found the next morning dead of gunshot wounds to his head and abdomen. Traveling companions who were either his servants with him or arrived later then buried him. Alternate accounts from Miss Griner included that she saw him calling for help, or sent her children the next morning looking for him, or that she saw him followed by 3 men whom he challenged to a duel up the trace, or that he was found in his cabin with his head beaten and was robbed and murdered in the process. There are also varying accounts as to whether he was found deceased or died some 2 hours after discovery. The suicide claim was based on facts such as before he began the trip, he had given power to his associates on the event of his death, and he composed a will as he traveled. He had supposedly attempted suicide earlier, and Thomas Jefferson claimed he suffered from severe depression. He was traveling because of financial difficulties due to the undermining efforts of Frederick Bates and suffering health issues related to alcoholism, although this is debated primarily because in the letters Bates wrote decrying Lewis, he never mentioned it, and certainly he would have, and disease, possibly malaria, which could both alter the mind, but again, that is debated. He may also have been suffering from an existential crisis, because although he and Clark had traveled the West successfully with few casualties, they did not find the Northwest Passage. Their trading posts were having difficulty with threats and attacks, and the consummate adventurer now found himself stuck in one place at a desk. He came home just past 30 years of age as a hero adventurer. It'd be the crowning achievement of a lifetime, and his should have been barely half over. What was he going to do now? He struggled to finish his journals for publication, and may have suffered from what is now known as PTSD as he transitioned to his new life. Others argue that considering that songs and poems are being written about him, he would have been highly sought after whether he would have committed suicide. Also, as an expert marksman, would he have botched it enough that he had to fire twice? Possible alternative theories to suicide are bandits on the famously dangerous path, a love affair between him and the innkeeper's wife, discovered by the innkeeper, or a treacherous and possibly corrupt army general named James Wilkinson, whom Lewis had replaced as governor, and of whom Theodore Roosevelt said, "In all our history, there is no more despicable character." He was an aide to Benedict Arnold when they failed in Quebec, a participant in the Conroy Cabal, known as Agent 13, as he spied on America and France for the Spanish. Sought to break Kentucky away from Virginia, and then the United States joined the Spanish colonies. Conspirator with Aaron Burr to separate Texas, whom he later betrayed and testified against, and ruled New Orleans harshly, locking up political opponents and anyone thought to be a threat. The idea of murder over suicide began to gain speculation in the 1840s, when a marker in Lewis's honor was erected. Upon exhuming the remains, those present said it seemed more likely he was murdered by an assassin rather than committed suicide, although they didn't make it clear why they held those beliefs. Okay,
So this is Travelers Paranormal. We are at the death and burial site of famed explorer Meriwether Lewis. There's something over there. To the right. What do you see?
I don't know. I don't see it anymore. Very dark.
So Meriwether Lewis was a famed explorer, Lewis and Clark. He spent 3 years traveling the West and mapping out the United States. And then he died mysteriously here along the Natchez Trace at Grinder's Stand. The Natchez Trace is a 444-mile road that goes across 3 different states. A few years ago, we drove the whole trace, and it's absolutely beautiful. So this is Meriwether Lewis's burial site. So we are going to be completing a paranormal challenge. Challenge was to go someplace kind of 1800s, do it old school with no lights. So in a few moments, I'm going to turn off my night vision. It's going to be very, very dark, and we are going to perform about a 15-20 minute investigation. Megan, I will not be able to see the dowsing rods at all.
Right?
Can you hear me? Hey.
Yes?
I will not be able to see the dowsing rods at all.
Do you want me to narrate what they do?
Will you be able to see them when I turn this off?
I can see them right now. If I can't, I'll put them away.
Okay. Are you ready to start?
Yeah.
Alright, so I'm going to turn this off. You're going to see how dark it is. And we are going to take about 15 or 20 minutes in total dark, use our senses, and investigate. We have a recorder set down by the stone. So, yep, it's dark. So, is there anybody here with us? My name's Johanna, and this is my sister Megan. So Megan is holding dowsing rods. If there's anybody here with us who would like to communicate, can you use those dowsing rods to show us your yes? We can try and do some questions. If there's anyone here who would like to communicate, can you use those dowsing rods to show us your yes? The little light there is our recorder. There's nothing I can do about that. If the spirit of Meriwether Lewis is here, would you be willing to communicate with us?
Yes.
Thank you. Megan is also listening to an SBox that is sweeping through different radio stations. Meriwether Lewis, is that you?
I'm here, and the dowsing rods are crossing.
Can you confirm for me, sir, is that your yes?
It said 2 syllables, and the dowsing rods straightened out.
Meriwether Lewis, if I'm communicating with you, can you cross the rods again to let me know that is your yes?
Help me?
How can I help you, sir? I understand there's questions about your death, whether it was murder or suicide. Can I communicate with you and maybe get the truth?
Give it me. The dowsing rods stayed straight.
I just saw a flash of lightning in the distance. We are expecting some pretty interesting storms tonight.
Thomas Jefferson. Dowsing rods are straight.
So Meriwether Lewis did know Thomas Jefferson. Meriwether Lewis was at one point governor of the Louisiana properties.
3 more syllables. Dowsing rod is straight.
Mr. Lewis, if this is you, we also have a recorder by your stone, and we can listen back to that later.
See them? Dowsing rods are straight.
Mr. Lewis, my name is Johanna, and this is Megan. Can you tell me about your journey west?
Voice.
Interesting.
Push. The push was a man's voice.
Mr. Lewis, if this is you, can you tell us about your journey west?
Dowsing rods are crossing.
A few years ago, we drove across the 48 continental...
Dowsing rods are straight.
A few years ago, we drove across the 48 continental United States. We saw a lot of monuments. It's been many years since you passed away, but you are still remembered as a hero for the work you did for this country. Thank you. Looking back on your journeys, is there a particular spot that you enjoyed? I keep seeing lights in the distance.
Dowsing rods are crossing.
There might be a car coming.
I feel something on my arm. I don't feel above. I just felt something on my arm.
That'll be...
On the side of the monument.
Mr. Lewis, are you near Megan? Okay, I think I see cars driving on the Natchez Trace. Whew. It is very unnerving being here in the dark.
Oh. The dowsing rods are straight.
My name's Johanna. What do you need? You said help twice.
The dowsing rods are both pointing to my left, away from the monument.
Are you trying to point us to where you are? So, interestingly, to Megan's left...
The dowsing rods are straight.
To Megan's left is the stand, which was like a trading post in restaurant for people to stop and rest on the Natchez Trace. Is to her left where Meriwether Lewis was killed.
Duel?
That is a theory. Was it a duel, sir? I feel chills, and it's hot out right now. Can you tell me, sir, who the duel was with? Was it someone from your travels or from politics?
Josh?
Can you tell me Josh's last name? One theory is that it was a man named James Wilkinson, I believe. I just heard a noise. I heard like a knocking noise. One of the theories as to if it was murder is a man named James Wilkinson, I believe, who Meriwether Lewis replaced in a political position, and James Wilkinson was upset about that. I want to say it was Teddy Roosevelt who described Wilkinson as like one of the worst scoundrels in our history. Try this. The person we're communicating with, if you aren't Meriwether Lewis, can you cross the dowsing rods?
Who is this?
My name is Johanna, and this is my sister Megan.
The dowsing rods are crossing.
So you aren't Meriwether Lewis. Can you tell me your name?
Amos?
Buried here are
Josh
several...
again.
Buried here, technically what we're in is called the Pioneer Cemetery.
The dowsing rods stayed crossed.
Can you tell me what year it is?
The dowsing rods are both pointing towards the monument.
Sir, is your name Amos?
Wish for... There were 2 more syllables, but I didn't catch them. Hear me?
We can hear you. Megan?
Dowsing rods are still pointing at the monument.
Can you tell me why you're pointing at the monument?
I went to sleep.
You went to sleep? Are you buried here in this cemetery?
The dowsing rods are straight again. Just heard a child's voice, but then I heard a man say yes.
Can you tell me what year it is? There might be a car coming. Technically, we shouldn't be here right now.
Hunting.
I'm not sure, but there might be a car coming. It looks like it stopped. Put the headphones back on, but I'll come tap you if we need to stop.
Okay.
I should say that Megan is blindfolded and wearing noise-canceling headphones so that she can't hear my questions. So I just went over and tapped her on the shoulder to let her know that there might be a car coming. I'm sorry, sir. Can you tell me what year it is? Is there anything you'd like to tell us about yourself? We've gotten the names Amos and Josh. Can you tell me your last name?
$77.
Are you trying to tell me the year? Wow. Are you telling me 1777?
Yes.
What about 1777? Is that what year you think it is?
Purchase. I think I just saw a light up in one of the trees flash.
So Megan doesn't know that there's storms coming. We'll ignore that. It is lightning.
Yeah, I just saw a light, like right in front of us flash.
Oh, well, that's interesting. It might still be the lightning.
Another light flashed. Oh, it might be fireflies. I could be an idiot.
How many of us are here right now?
There's 3 syllables, so I didn't make out the words.
Amos or Josh, can you tell me your last name? It looks like my video camera has started a new recording.
Others coming?
What others?
Flip it off. Pass.
We're trying to communicate with Meriwether Lewis. Do you know him?
Settle this.
What are you trying to settle? Meriwether.
Woman's voice. I think she said hurry.
Meriwether Lewis was traveling the trace to go to Washington to settle some debts that he had had due to some of his expeditions.
Price. I almost feel like I'm hearing a robbery, like someone's telling them to take off jewelry and then they can pass. And she's saying, like, just hurry and give it to them.
The trace was a very dangerous place. There were a lot of robbers. Megan could be tapping into a residual haunting, like a place memory repeating.
Let me go.
That does sound like what we could be hearing.
What do you want?
I just heard a man's voice.
Phone?
I 100% just heard a man's voice. Is there anyone here with us?
I just heard the name Kurt.
I don't know if it's going to be on the recording, but I 100% heard a man's voice.
Like, actual person out here, or
I don't know.
body voice?
I might hear car doors. Well, we got here at 8 o'clock. It's been more than 15 minutes, and for our own safety, we might have to go. I'm going to turn my night vision on again. Meriwether Lewis, if that was you, we will come back again to try and communicate with you.
Thank you, anyone, if they're here, for speaking to us.
Alright, so my night vision's not working. Thanks. We're going to walk back to the car. I'm going to turn on the flashlight.
Yeah, there's car.
Whew, alright, I'm still recording at this moment.
Yeah.
We are back in the car safely. So, we can talk a little bit about what was going on there, but I think Megan's right that we were tapping into maybe a residual haunting. It's theorized that Meriwether Lewis could have been being robbed and been killed during a robbery, and it makes sense for the Natchez Trace.
It was known as being dangerous to travelers. This is part of why it didn't make sense that he changed his route.
I'm going to put home in here. I didn't even mention that he changed his route. Originally he was supposed to go to Washington via water, and he changed to an over-the-land route. I'm going to keep recording until we get back onto the Natchez Trace, just in case there's people here. So thank you to Whatthe Paranormal for issuing these challenges. This first one was to do an investigation
Obey
in the
traffic
dark.
laws, be alert, and use voice commands while driving.
That was loud. So the first one was to do an investigation in the dark. We were going to go to a local cemetery, but we were near this location, so we decided to come here instead. The Natchez Trace is a 444-mile road that goes across 3 different states. A few years ago, we drove the whole trace, and it's absolutely beautiful.
What do you need? You said help twice. The dowsing rods are both pointing to my left, away from the monument.
Are you trying to point us to where you are? So, interestingly, to Megan's left,
The dowsing rods are straight.
one of the theories as to if it was murder is a man named James Wilkinson, I believe, who Meriwether Lewis replaced in a political position, and James Wilkinson was upset about that. I want to say it was Teddy Roosevelt who described Wilkinson as like one of the worst scoundrels in our history.